The Italian Job, a movie which is at least partly known for its famed triaxle coach. But there's more to the story of this type of coach than just the movie. It was one of a mere 58 that were produced, and one of the last by Thomas Harrington Coach Builders. This is the story of the Harrington Legionnaire, one of the most famous coaches ever produced. Hi, this is Jeffrey. Now, some of you may have seen the 1969 movie, The Italian Job. Now, one of the stars of that movie was a red, white, and blue, very interesting three-axle coach. Now, that coach was one of about 58 made that was called the Harrington Legionnaire. So it was somewhat rare. So that's what we're going to look at in this video, the Harrington Legionnaire coach. So let's get started in taking a look at one of the most interesting and famous coaches of all time, the Harrington Legionnaire. In September of 1963, Thomas Harrington Coach Builders announced the launch of an all-new design called the Legionnaire. Like most Harrington bodies, there would be a Mark I and eventually a Mark II. The Legionnaire was built on three chassis, which were, number 1, the tri-axle twin-steer Bedford VAL, with a total of about 42. Number 2, the Ford Thames 676E, with a total of 14. And number 3, the Guy Victory, with a total of 2. It was available only in an 11-meter or 36-foot length, and its power plant was a Leyland 0.400 straight 6 diesel engine. Excerpts of the press release for this new vehicle in the trade journal Bus and Coach read as follows. Plans are now in hand for the production of another coach body for the Bedford VAL 6-wheeled twin-steer chassis for next season. Named Legionnaire, it has been evolved by Thomas Harrington Limited, the Hove, Sussex coach building concern, as an addition to its established range of bodies. From drawings, the appearance of the new coach appears to be attractive. 3 windows on both sides, each nearly 7 feet wide, together with deep wrap-around screens front and rear, give promise of excellent passenger visibility. Such large areas of glass are heavy. The estimated weight of the 36-foot by 8 2.5 inches well-equipped body with 52 seats is commendably low at approximately 3 tons. However, it could be said that the Legionnaire lacked the elegance of the Cavalier and Grenadier, which was designed and built by Harrington during the same time period. From a styling point of view, the big advantage was the innovation of the 3-axle layout of the VAL chassis. Apart from the somewhat large grille on the front, which was a design trend at the time, the entire vehicle was considered a step forward in modern coach design. Consequently, at the time, it attracted criticism for being too box-like. The roof was squared off at the sides, but tapered down at each end, as can be seen in an elevation drawing of the Legionnaire. This, and the gentle rise of the bottom edge beyond the rear wheels, combined to give a more refined effect than a plain box. On the back of some Legionnaires, in order to allow the maximum height for the rear windows, they did not include the glass panel which normally displayed the operator's name. This was placed in a separate enclosure behind the rear seat and viewed through the window. As with previous models, aluminum trim was used around the outside waist rail and was supplied by the German firm Hapisch. But for the Legionnaire, there was a wider design not seen before. Although Smith's forced air ventilation was used, with the intakes being under the peak above the windscreen, sliding top vents were used on 2 of the large side windows. It did not take Ford long to develop their 570 Thames PSV chassis to enable fitting of the 36-foot-long coach bodies. This was known as the Thames 676, and by 1964, the Legionnaire was available on the Thames in Mark I form. It has to be said that the appearance became less sleek when mounted on the Thames chassis as compared to the VAL. Small factors all colluded to take away the long, low look of the Bedford version. First, the coach was, indeed, not so low. The Ford chassis required that some 2 inches in height be added to the body, and this may be seen just above the front sidelights, which are no longer equidistant between the waist trim and grille. Larger wheels meant larger arches, which cut through the top line of the side trim so it no longer ran front to back in an unbroken line. Finally, and probably unintentionally, Bedford had really achieved a win with the number of axles on the VAL chassis, which seemed to add a certain style of originality to break up the slab sides and enhance the designs of all coach builders that utilized the 3-axle chassis. At the end of 1964, the Mark II Legionnaire was shown at the London Commercial Motor Show. The changes were mostly construction detail and may have been Harrington responding to comments from operators. The obvious difference was the change to the curve of the roof, which abandoned the hard-formed line of the Mark I and changed to the shallow curve, which was the same as the Grenadier. Due to this, the interior headroom and luggage rack space was reduced, which was a bit of a negative. Like the Grenadier, the Mark II could be ordered with 4 Perspex glazed panels set into the roof, but the general opinion was that on all vehicles, this led to the interiors becoming oppressively hot. However, in comments on my previous video on the large-windowed Duple Viceroy, those who have been passengers on that similar coach relayed their experience that just the side windows alone, even without the roof panels, could cause extreme discomfort in hot weather. This may be some reflection on the questionable efficiency of the Smith's forced air ventilation system generally coming into common use on many coach builders' designs at the time. For the Mark II Legionnaire, this system was standard and the opening side windows were deleted. This undoubtedly gave the coach a much cleaner appearance, but the air intakes in the peak just over the windscreen may not have been adequate replacement. It is worth mentioning that after the end of Harrington Coach Building, the Plaxton Panorama design resorted to quite large air scoops on the roof to get enough air into the coach. Slightly more subtle was the fact that the body panels were no longer fastened with rivets. They reverted to a fairly commonly used system where the aluminum is literally nailed into position and then a vertical aluminum strap is secured across the join. In the Mark II Legionnaire, wood was fastened to the main aluminum framing to allow this to be done. Many operators were of the opinion that the riveted construction looked cheap and bus-like. It is also possible that the Mark I riveted construction had not stood up well to the flexing that was to be found in both the Ford and Bedford chassis due to their lightweight construction. Only approximately 58 Legionnaires of all varieties were produced, including 2 rather special coaches on a guide chassis. This probably reflects the limitations imposed by the size of the factory rather than any suggestion that it was an unpopular design. In most instances, it was selling in orders of 1 or 2 when the Grenadier order book was routinely made up of batches of at least 4 and maybe up to a dozen at a time. In these circumstances, scheduling precious space for a run of the Legionnaire would have been a secondary consideration. The last Legionnaire appears to have been made in July of 1965, before the final announcement to cease coach building was made by Harrington. If you think you may have seen this bus in a movie, you are right. The Harrington Legionnaire was featured in the 1969 film The Italian Job, which was Bedford VAL 14 ALR 453B, new in April of 1964 to Batten of London. For use in the film, it was modified to reinforce the bulkhead behind the driver's seat to allow the Mini Cooper-esque getaway cars to be driven into the bus safely. Even still, there was enough force in the event to push the driver into the steering wheel. True to the film's story, the destination displays on the coach showed London to Turin, and then the opposite at the end of the film. It also displays Charlie Croker's Coach Tours logos on the rear and both flanks, a reference to Michael Caine's character. After the film, in 1969, it was converted back to a coach by William Marshall of Blackpool. In 1971, it was in use by Edmund Birch of Liverpool, who ran it as Wendy's Coaches. It was then acquired by dealer Andrew Drummond, Harthill, Scotland, who sold it to James Maffan in Scotland. It was then purchased by Archie Cromer of Bridge Garage and converted it into a racing car, transporter, and caravan. It then became a horse box in 1983 and a motorcycle sidecar transporter in 1986. In 1990, it was broken up for scrap by Bill Davey of Fife. In 1999, Corgi Toys released a sought-after gift set of the Italian Job vehicles, which included the 3 Mini Cooper cars, albeit incorrectly modeled on much newer Minis in 1:36 scale, and a 1:50th scale Plaxton Panorama-bodied Bedford VAL coach in place of the Harrington Legionnaire, which the model company did not produce. At least one Legionnaire is preserved in absolutely pristine condition. Registration number CNW155C in the Kensies of Shepworth livery of its owner is a Mark II version and was new to Heaps Tours in 1965. It took at least 3 years to restore and made its first appearance at the Brighton Coach Rally on April 22, 2006. So there it is, the story of the 3-axle as well as the 2-axle Harrington Legionnaire, the bus that was made famous by the movie The Italian Job. Now, just one other thing I wanted to mention here is that there is another recreation of the Italian Job bus, and it is on a Bedford VAL chassis, but the body is by Willowbrook because there were no other Legionnaires available to be used for this purpose. So I just wanted to let everyone know that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at the Harrington Legionnaire. And as always, thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye.